What was the creepiest or most paranormal thing that's ever happened to you? Creepy for me. I was having a tense conversation with someone that I was close to years ago. The conversation quickly devolved into a passive-aggressive fight that ended with the other person getting in the car and driving away. As I started heading back inside, the other person came back, got out of the car, and started our conversation again. The tone of voice was totally different and the stance was different and the feeling in the air was completely off. I don't know how else to explain it. As the conversation progressed, the other person started saying some nasty and mean things that were completely out of character. I said, "This isn't like you, person." They said, "What makes you think that I'm person?" I remember continuing the conversation and talking to the person for a long time, but I don't remember anything specific. I do remember becoming more and more alarmed and knowing something wasn't right. Finally, I told the person to go home. They complied and left. I went back inside and started telling my sibling about the situation when the doorbell rang. Maybe 2-3 minutes had passed. It was the person coming back to apologize for the original fight. They had been driving around town for a long time and didn't want to go home, leaving things unresolved. I asked why they had said some of the things from the last conversation and they looked at me like I was crazy. They had no idea what I was talking about. Totally could have been lying. But that whole situation just felt dark. Scared the heck out of me. Scary crap, man. IDKY, but this reminds me of a very creepy Doctor Who episode. I was a manager of computer repair for a retailer a couple years ago. We had a client's computer in the back running various malware and virus scans. I was doing morning paperwork in the back near the computer. This PC had its screensaver on, displaying random photos from the My Pictures folder, various family members, children's birthday parties, the usual stuff. Then from then of my eye, I swear to God, I saw a picture of a woman from the shoulders up with her throat cut. As soon as I realized what I was making out, I directed my full attention and it was back to photos of a car show. As the day went on, I thought nothing of it and proceeded to continue my work until I was bringing another customer's PC to the back to work on, and again from my peripheral I could have sworn I saw a bloody body inbound in a trunk of a car. At that moment I began to freak out. I grabbed one of my employees, explained to him the situation. We then sat for 10 minutes and watched this screensaver. It is against company policy to search through the client's personal files without absolute just cause. We then proceeded to see a photo, 2 bodies in a shallow grave out in the woods and another photo of a severed hand down in kitchen drawer. I then went and got the general manager and informed him of the situation and had him view this screensaver. We then felt that I would be in everyone's best interest to contact law enforcement. In about 15 minutes later, owner of the computer and another gentleman show up. I proceed to tell him that his computer is not ready and it will be a while. He then informs me that he was called there because someone reported there was some photographs of a grisly murder that we had found. I showed him his computer and then his partner then begins to laugh at him. Apparently he went against police policy and took some of his work home with him and had never noticed his work photos were being used as a screensaver. Was he really a detective, though, or some serial with a police scanner police buddy? I was living with my now mother-in-law in a house she had just purchased a few months before. We had all had various weird feelings or experiences in the house, but 2 really stick out. Collectively, there were 3 dogs living in the house at the time. One evening we are all sitting with our backs to the hallway. This is significant. Watching a movie. All of a sudden my German Shepherd and my Terrier both perk up their ears and start staring down the hallway behind where we are sitting. I mean, full attention. I notice and turn around. The light in the hall was off. It was dark, but of course don't see anything. 5 minutes later, they're still staring and now growling. This time my wife and I turn around and we both watch as the light switch on the wall gets flipped to on. Dogs went crazy and so did we. A few weeks later, same scenario, light is off and we are watching a movie. My German Shepherd loved to play fetch and we always had a million balls around to entertain her. This time, she's staring down the hallway and wagging her dang tail. This time, we all notice again and start to watch. I swear to God, a ball, single orange tennis ball, came rolling down the hallway towards her. We all went white. There were a few others, but Jesus, I hated that hallway. It never felt like a bad energy, but my feeble little brain was still scared nonetheless. It sucks this is so far down the thread. That's a wild story. A scary story doesn't need much detail to be really terrifying. A dog's reaction is always spooky because they don't have hyperactive imaginations and are not susceptible to persuasions. Even more scary is that whatever was in your hallways can't manipulate physical objects. This thing could touch you, grab you, etc. Not creepy, but definitely paranormal. I was about 17 and was in my bedroom crying my eyes out over something. Home could be difficult at times, and that evening I was really upset. I really needed someone to talk to, but the only phone in the house was downstairs where my parents were, so calling a friend wasn't an option. I didn't know what to do to deal with the crap I was trying to live with and really felt that it couldn't go on for much longer. I remember thinking, please, someone, just help me, not a prayer as such. I'm not really sure if that does any good, more sort of a mental scream into the void. There was definitely no one in the room with me. It was a tiny room, and I had my back to a chest of drawers. And then I felt something on my left shoulder, as if someone was standing behind me and resting their hand on me. I could feel the weight of each individual finger, and the palm cupping my shoulder, and I could feel warmth from it. It didn't scare me, but it was enough to stop me crying. I guess the feeling lasted for a minute or so and then just stopped. I have no idea what it was, but it was enough to calm me down. I wish I could feel it again. My aunt had the same thing happen to her in college. She was sitting alone in her dorm on her bed, crying into her hands when she felt the weight and sensation of a hand on her shoulder. She always felt that it was her deceased grandmother assuring her everything would be okay. She says it calmed her down, like it did you. I shared a room with a guy in college who was a musician. He'd stay out late almost every night and come home around 3 or 4 in the morning. Our room was a straight shot through kitchen from the front door. One night I woke up to the bedroom door opening and figured it was just my roommate coming home after a gig. I thought it was strange that he turned the light on when coming in. He knew I was a light sleeper and would normally use his phone's light to shine around the room if he was looking for something while I was asleep. My bed was twin-sized, positioned against the wall connecting the bedroom to the kitchen. When he came in, I was facing the wall. I kept my eyes closed and pretended I was still asleep because I didn't feel like having a conversation with a most likely drunken friend while I was still half asleep. I heard him go to his side of the room, opposite of my bed, and rustle around his desk and dresser looking for something. Sometimes he would grab some clothes for the next day and go stay at a buddy's house, so I wasn't concerned. Then I felt him start reaching under my bed. I kept a few things under there, but he would normally ask before straight up taking anything of mine. At that point I was really confused and annoyed by all this, so I made it a point to aggressively roll over on my other side and face the middle of the room in the direction from where he was reaching, so he knew I was pissed that he was ruining my beauty sleep. Then I heard nothing, but I could feel he shot up from under the bed and was just standing there. I never opened my eyes, but I figured he would either apologize for waking me up or something. But he never said a word. He just stood there. After probably 2 minutes with the light still on, I heard him leave the room and go to the kitchen. I opened my eyes after a couple more minutes because he left the light on in the bedroom. He wasn't in the kitchen, but he had pulled a knife from the knife block and left it on the table. I checked around the house and couldn't find him, but quickly realized my Xbox, book bag, wallet, etc. were stolen. I called my roommate to see if he had been home, but he was miles away at a party. He still had his house keys and never gave them to anyone else prior. I must have accidentally left the door unlocked that evening, which was the one time someone decided to check the knob. Police never followed up with me after that night, so I doubt they ever caught the guy. I can't imagine what would have happened if I ever did open my eyes and see that guy standing there, or if I chased him out to the kitchen. Your story is creepier than drawers banging or black faceless shadowman. I'm glad you didn't get stabbed to death that night over a few possessions. I was driving to pick up my friend from the airport around 10 at night. His girlfriend was also with me and she wanted to see him as soon as possible. We were going down some dark, super lonely back road. I've never been that way before, but I was following good old Apple Maps. Eventually we came up alongside a train that was matched with our speed, so we couldn't see out past it on the right side of the car. After a couple minutes of that, we came upon a train yard on our left. A very spooky, very generic horror movie train yard. Nothing crazy yet, except for the fact that it went on and on and on. We probably spent 10 minutes driving at 45 miles an hour down a dark back road with a train yard on our left and a train on our right blocking the view. Eventually we made it back into society and picked up my friend from the airport. We told him all about the spooky train yard and train and were excited to drive back and show him just how much it was like a generic horror film. We drove back down the same roads. It wasn't there. We never passed a train yard. There were no trains on the tracks. Now on our left. Friend's girlfriend and I flipped out. We swore up and down we drove right along the train yard for a long time. The drive home felt much shorter. Your car trip took a brief detour into the twilight zone. We lived in a house a few years back, and random things would just go missing. Then they'd turn up somewhere else. We never really thought hard on it cause they were never expensive or important things. So because of this none of us ever mentioned it to each other. Fast forward and mum loses an earring. Not a huge deal but it's a nice dangly pair she wears frequently. Maybe a month later I come home and find it perfectly laid out in the middle of the ground at the end of a high traffic hallway. It has 3 doors at the end. Take a photo and show mum when she gets back. Give her back her earring and we discuss the oddity. I mentioned that lately I've been misplacing random inconsequential stuff like staplers, and she looks at me and she goes that's weird. Me too. Our housemate gets home and we mention it and he goes oh man so weird, my razor vanished for a while and I found it back on my sink one day. So basically we're all convinced there was a friendly ghost attached to that house that just misplaced things to let us know they were present. I was 15ish and babysitting a neighbor girl down the road from my parents' house. The house was older, but I never thought it was creepy. They also had this awful rat terrier that would bark at everything. Worst dog ever. Once the girl went to bed, I sat in the living room and was watching TV. The dog started freaking out, but instead of barking at the door like normal, she started barking at the corner of the room. Then she would run to another room and bark and come back to where I was like she was following something. Finally she stayed in the kitchen barking for a solid 2 minutes. Afraid that she was going to wake the girl up, I went into the kitchen to quiet her down. When I walked in I froze and saw that every single cabinet door in the kitchen was open. All of them. I grabbed the dog and ran to the living room. After she stopped barking, I went back into the kitchen and closed everything. Thankfully the dad finally came home soon after. I refused to go back and my parents never believed me. I still get freaked out when I think about it. My boyfriend and I woke up in separate parts of the house in hysterics, naked and covered in sweat. When we both finally calmed down and talked we realized we had the same dream of being surrounded by a group of black and white people with no mouths. That's gonna be a no from me dog. I don't smoke and I don't have many friends who do, but I keep several ashtrays at home, just in case. So, one day, about a year ago, I was looking for some papers and I found one of those ashtrays in one of the cupboards. It was completely empty and quite clean. BTW, I was pretty busy that day, so instead of putting the ashtray back in the cupboard, I just laid it on the kitchen table and went to do some repair work in the garage. I returned inside the house about an hour later, and the ashtray, still lying on the kitchen table, was filled with cigarette ash. No cigarette butts, just ash. I felt a faint scent of cigarette smoke in the house. Definitely not as strong as I would have expected, judging by the amount of ash. Like I said, the ashtray was definitely empty and clean when I found it and put it on the table. I took a kitchen knife and carefully searched the entire house. Nobody was there. I checked all the doors and windows. They were locked. Then I searched the house again, checking was any cash or valuables missing, but it was all there. I called all my friends, even non-smokers, and asked them did they happen to drop by my house that day. They all said no. I also inspected locks for damage, but there didn't appear to be any. I changed locks, just in case, and had trouble sleeping for days afterwards. I actually stored the ash into the bag, and I still keep it in the drawer, just in case. Though I doubt it will actually resolve or prove anything. The day after that bizarre incident, a murder took place in my neighborhood. A mentally disturbed girl with a history of drug abuse stabbed a convenience store cashier to death, following an argument over a pack of cigarettes. It is very likely unrelated, but sometimes I wonder. I don't keep spare keys in the yard, in front of the door or anything like that, in case someone is wondering. This is the cranky catto. Comment below and tell him to calm down. When he feels better, he will bless you with great fortune. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.